To start out with, there are two access types that we have. We have a traditional client that I'll get to in just a minute, where I'll do the majority of the demo. And then we have a Windows browser-based dashboard and client access, which is what you see here. This, you can see the menus on the left-hand side are a subset of our total ERP solution. That's because these are the modules that have been completed and delivered on the browser-based client to date. This is an ongoing process that will happen throughout this year and will be done by the end of the year. So you will have your choices whether you're going to use the browser-based client access or whether you're going to use the traditional Windows desktop access. And they'll both be supported. They're both fine. It just depends on which one you like. An advantage of this dashboard here is obviously you get screens. You can go to customers and you can see customers. You can see the information, and you can see this not only on a PC, but you can see it on an iPad or any other device, an iPhone. You can do it on any phone you want. So any device that has a browser has access to the software through this, and it is an online update. So it's all web driven and things. So so we've got customers and invoices and tickets and time. So invoices show you all the different customers, and you can pay them here. Or this is also what our gets exposed to the customer as a customer portal. So the customer can connect, see their invoices, and pay their invoices online. So they can go in and they could click to pay, and then it comes with a little box pops. And am I going to pay by credit card, pay by e-check? You know, I'm not a robot, and then it'll ask for the information. So they can pay their invoices. It'll go in and apply the payment within the Rover system and do it all online and show it as paid without you ever having to touch anything. So it's kind of a nice outside feature. And then there's scanning mechanisms, and there's inventory lookups, and I can look it up by part number. If I put in a part number, it'll show me the inventory and all the parts. Now, some of these numbers are going to look a little different when we get to the desktop client, because that's pointing to a demo database. This is still in a development mode database that I'm pointing to, so the data will be a little bit different, but you see the basic information. You can see how things are laid out. So that's the browser-based client. The desktop client looks a little more traditional, like what you're maybe used to seeing. We've got a main menu structure over here on the right. We've got that same menu structure over here on the left with access with using, kind of a Windows folder format. And then down the bottom, we've got a section where you can see your messages or alerts, and I'll get to those in a minute. You can see your tasks or reminders, or you can see favorites. So users can drop the things they do on a regular basis down here on the bottom. So with a single click or technically a double click, they can open any of these without having to traverse through the menus to find it. So it's a fast way to get to the process. So and there is obviously security delivered with all this. So I don't have any security turned on now, but when you turn security on, you can secure by user ID down to the menu. You can secure down to the procedure within the menu, and you can secure down to an individual field on a procedure. So let's say our inventory inquiry shows an average cost, and there's a certain person you don't want to see that. You can turn that off for them with a single click, and it goes away for them, but everybody else can see it. So you can see how that security is pretty powerful with just a point and click kind of a security system. So it's pretty easy to set up. These are all the modules that make up the Rover ERP. I don't need to read them all to you, but you can kind of see how they all lay out. The traditional menus, there is a billing menu. This is part of something we've recently added because we do our own internal billing and our own internal ticketing system tracking on the Rover system. Rover ERP is used by Zoomasys internally as their own accounting system. So we've taken things we use and we've made them standard and delivered them to customers because we figure if we're using it, somebody else might want to use it too. So you got all the financial modules, the transaction modules, the GL, the manufacturing planning. Just to point out a couple, there is a workflow management system, and this is the alert system that I referred to briefly. This allows you to create an alert to be delivered based on any action in the system. So customer goes on hold, sales order goes on over the credit limit, inventory part gets received you were waiting for and you want to know when it gets here. You don't want to wait to be notified. You can set all of those up, and down here on the bottom, they will show up in your messages. And or it can be delivered as an email if you set yourself up with an email address in the system, and it'll deliver it to you as an email, or both. So you have those choices on how you want to do that. So that's what the messages portion of this is it's alerts from within the system. And that's, again, any action in the system, any record filing, any record deleting, anything that you decide you want to know about, you can set up. There are a whole bunch of predefined definitions delivered, and then you can create more based on looking at those and seeing how they're set up, if there's something different you want that we haven't delivered yet. If I look down below each module, there are always 3 sublevels: all the data entries, all reports and inquiries, and all processes. So if I go down below there, then I get all the procedures that are used. The procedures provide both a description and a command name. And the command names, if I'm not sure if your existing system, I think ProMan does allow command names as well. So this is similar. We're doing command names with the file name, a dot, and an R for report, a .q for an inquiry, a .f for a form, a .l for a label. So when you look at a procedure, you can tell kind of what this is doing and what it's supposed to do, and then you can go down even further by looking at the description off to the right. You can see a scroll bar off to the right always means unlimited. So you have a multi-valued field, which is what the menus are. You can scroll down and you can see the entire menu by doing this. So, and we'll get into those types of fields when we get into the entry screens as well. So from a navigation standpoint, I can double click the thing here. I can double click it here. I can right click and run it. Or I can also click this button, and when I first log in, it'll automatically open customer inquiry and minimize it down to the bottom, so it's already open for me. So you can do those kind of things as well. So if I double click customer inquiry, it opens, and it opens with whatever font size and colors I've set to be. And it also, I've got this set to float. You can also dock this so it docks on the menu, and so if you want things more organized so things don't float on you, you can do that. You can see I've also set a color bar next to the cursor, so as the cursor moves around the screen, it's easy to see where I am. So it comes up, it starts at the customer number prompt, and it says, okay, what customer number do you want to look at? Most people don't know their customer numbers, but there's always a number of some kind involved. Some people use alphabetic, some people just use sequence numbers. So we can look it up in a couple ways. One, we can right click or double click, and I can look this customer up by PO, invoice, name, phone, address, city, state, zip, any one of their contact names or any one of their contact phone numbers. Or if I know the customer name, I can type in the first part of any one word of their name. I can type in Evan, and it'll find all the Evans for me. And I can say, well, that's the one I want. I can double click it or single click it, say select, either way it'll work. And then it populates the information. So I didn't need to know 27 was the customer number, but if I did, I could have also put that in. That would have been easy. So I've got names and order, open order value and current AR balance, and then we get into fields that are multi-value. Now you're familiar, if at all familiar with the multi-value system, you know about multi-values. Multi-values are presented in Rover with a scroll bar off to the right. So anytime you have a scroll bar, you have an unlimited number of entries. So you have an unlimited number of lines of address, of ship addresses. And by the way, these addresses are actually in the customer record broken out to street address, city, state, zip, country, etc. We just combine them for screen real estate purposes on the inquiry here. So you don't have to worry about, well, how do I get at the city? It's really easy to sort things. So I've got the customer address, I've got a customer, I've got ship to addresses, and I've got a bill to customer. So I got 3 levels of customers I can use here. I won't go through every prompt in the system, but you can kind of see how things work. These multi-values, I've got notes down here, I've got pricing contracts, I've got reps, I've got tax codes. And then besides the static customer information here, I've got across the top a whole bunch of tabs. So what we're giving you in these tabs are everything people have told us they want to know about the customer. So we're not making you bounce around to multiple different inquiries to see different things. We're putting them all on one inquiry and just giving you multiple tabs. So I've got a tab for summary sales data. And I'm sorry, but I upgraded my client and I broke my graph, so it's not showing very well. But I can have as many months and years of history as I'd like to keep, and it shows me quantities and amounts and costs and margin. And again, these are summary numbers just for visibility purposes. And then I've got detail sales, which shows me exactly what was purchased, when it was purchased, what they paid for it, etc. And then I've got different ways to get at things. So this shipment number column, shipment number 5019-1 is sales order number 5019. -1 is the first shipment against that sales order. -2, -3, -4. It's automatically back ordered if you don't ship everything. But I'm in the shipment number field, so if I right click in here, I have access to things that are keyed to the shipment number field. So I can look at the sales order, I can display detailed shipment data, which shows me the tracking information, the charges, the invoice number, the basic information most people call and want to see. Although all this information is on the invoice and the packing list that gets sent to them, either emailed or printed or both. So generally they have this information, but the number one thing people call about are this. That's what we kept hearing. So we put it in an inquiry. Or if I want to drill down, we have an open with. I'm in the shipment number field, so it opens every procedure that I'm secured to use that's keyed by the shipment number, and I can pick any one I want. So I can say I want to see the confirmation screen, and it brings up the confirmation screen, brings up the shipment, shows me all the information, shows me the freight code if there is one. I can pull this back down here. I got shipment line items with the image of the part. If I want to keep track of that, I can see the lot number, the bin number, and the serial number that was delivered if that information exists. So you can see how you can get right to the information you want to see. Now notice I have two screens open at this point, and you can see down the bottom I have this in our little taskbar here, those two screens. You can have up to 20 screens open at one time, and you're still only one concurrent user in the system. So you're not occupying two users by opening two screens. You're not logged in twice, you're logged in once, looking at one screen at a time. So you're in the middle of doing a data entry and somebody calls you and wants you to look up something or check something or quote something. You can minimize that screen, go off to the other screen, do what you want to do, and then go right back to where you were. It's pretty easy. So it keeps track of it, and it keeps track down here on the bottom of all the screens you have open. So I can close that out. I can go right back to customer inquiry, and I have quotes for this customer, what quotes are out there, what open orders are there, and what's the status of those orders. If the ship status is new, that means picking list has been printed, but it hasn't been confirmed yet, so it hasn't shipped. If it says shipped, then it's been confirmed and shipped and maybe out the door, or may just be sitting at the back door waiting to be picked up, depending on your process. And then at the end, once it's invoiced, it drops off of this sheet and ends up over in the detail sales screen. Job status, if you are make to order, then we'll link the sales order that you entered to the work order that was created for it. We could auto generate that, or you could create them manually. Those are your choices. And then it'll show you the steps that are involved on the routing for that work order and where the units are on the floor. We still okay with everything? Everybody still connected?
All good.
Nice. Okay, I'm sorry. Every once in a while I get going and I find out somebody dropped, and I've been talking to myself for the last half hour. So just want to make sure. All right, so RMAs, again, not that anybody'd ever dare return anything, but if they do, you can send them an RMA. Accounts receivable, this is open AR activity, shows you not only open, but also closed and recently paid with an average days to pay at the bottom. 71 days is not all that good. I think somebody did something ugly here with a really old, 1,400 days it took to pay that invoice. So that's skewing my number. Contacts, you can have as many contacts as you want. They've got their own names, their titles, email addresses, more than one, multiple phone numbers with extensions. You can link them to specific types of reports. So if I print an AR report, this contact number will print. If I print a shipping report, maybe this one will print. If I print a sales report, this one will print. Because if you print a collection report, seeing the shipping person on the report doesn't do you any good. That's not the person you're going to call. So you want to see the person you need to call to make that contact. And then contact logs, again, unlimited. You can have all the information about who talked to who, what did we talk about, price verification if I want to see what this was, or call to say it didn't work or ship the wrong part. I can open that and say, okay, I could see all the information about it. I could schedule a follow-up, which ends up down here in your tasks. And I've got attachments and I've got which customer it's related to, etc. So we're keeping track of all that for you. And then I've got attachments, which basically say I can attach any document to any record. Certain documents you'll decide you're going to attach to the customer. It could be agreements, it could be maps, it could be contact information. If you get down to specific documents like a signed packing list or a PO they sent you, then you'll probably end up attaching that to the individual order and not the customer, because then you'd end up with a whole bunch of records attached to the customer that you have to go searching through. So you'll work out what you want to attach where, and our implementation team would work with you to help you make those decisions. So that's customer inquiry. The other thing the last thing I like to show just from a navigation and data standpoint is inventory, because everybody's got parts and everybody's got customers. So those are the two things most people like to see. At the part number prompt, I can look up by a reference bin, a partial part, model description, category, a list of manufacturer or vendor part numbers, drawing numbers, configuration IDs. There is a product configurator delivered with this system that lets you build up parts on the fly and create bills of materials and routings. Specifications, which could be size, length, width, color, voltage, dimensions, whatever you need. And then UPC code or customer part number. Or if I know that the part number starts with a certain set of characters, kind of like the customer, I can do that. And I can say, okay, let me see all the 110s. And there it is. So now I see that part. I see what the standard cost if we're tracking it. I see average cost if we're tracking it. What my stocking unit of measure is, average monthly usage, and then any inventory locations that have activity for this part. You can have any number of inventory locations and call them whatever you want. I think if I were to right click and look at list inventory locations, you can see that in this account, a lot of people have taken a lot of liberties with a bunch of different locations. But it could be a city, it could be a location, it could be just a location within your area, like stock versus finished good versus raw material, that kind of stuff. And then we'll show you how many are on hand, committed, allocated, short, available, or on order. Now, just as a note, you're seeing whole numbers here. This part has a flag on it that say do not allow decimals because it's a whole assembly. You can't sell or move a half of an assembly. So when that flag is set, it shows only whole numbers in the inventory inquiry. The inventory is all carried to 2 decimals, so you can move half a foot or something, or 3/4 of a foot or something, whatever you wanted to do that way. And then we've got on hand, committed, allocated, shortages, net available, and on order, which is incoming. If I want to see any of these, I can see the commitments and I can look here and say, let me see those 13. Here is where they're coming from. So I got 3 sales orders. Here are the scheduled delivery dates. Sorry about old dates, but I don't update this demo account very often. On order, what's coming in. So because this is a make part, all of my on order is coming in from a work order. If this was a buy part, all of my on order would be coming in from a PO, and this would be purchase order. This would be the purchase order number, and this would be the vendor name. If it's a combination part, which is sometimes I make it, sometimes I buy it, I could see a combination of purchase orders and work orders. Kind of rare, but it's possible. Usage history, as I mentioned, I stomped on my graph somehow, so but I can keep as many months and years of history as you want to keep, and this time you see the scroll bar is right to left because of the way it displays. If you use lot control, this will show you all the lot numbers that are on hand for this part and where they are. And it's important to note that everything that moves inventory in this system creates an inventory transaction audit record. It says on this date, this was the quantity moved, and in this case, it moved from finished goods to a cost of goods location, which is a a non-physical location carrying a cost of goods account number. And it went through the shipment process, and that was the shipment number. This was a completion from a work order to finished goods for 4 units. I can see 931 was the work order number. So you can kind of follow along this by descending date and time. So you can kind of follow along in the order things happened. If you want to know who did this or you want any other information, you can drill down and look at details. And you can see who did it. And you can see the before and after image of this location, because people want to know, what did it look like before, and what did this do to me? How did I get affected? Just in case there's any question, you're trying to map back to a certain quantity. And then if they put any notes about the transaction, it'll be here. So that's kind of inventory inquiry. So having shown that and shown navigation and drill downs and all of that stuff, what can I show you today that is a hot button for you guys? Or are there any?
Daniel or Andy, y'all, is there anything, Robert, anything y'all want to see that we haven't talked about or he hasn't shown us?
Well, on the inventory right there, Ron, like that looked like more like big overviews of, moving from this to this, but within those locations, those can be like just the same item in like inventory locations here going from there into production as well, right? Is there any kind of like scannable? I saw scanning inventory. I mean, is that something that we can give a forklift driver a scanner? They can scan this barcode, pull up the number, and say I'm moving this many from this location to production, or?
Yeah, let me give you a couple options on that. One is you can use this client to do that by bringing up the inventory transaction screen and just scanning it. That would be maybe a tablet with a USB connected barcode device. That's kind of old school, but that still works. Or you can use the scanning mechanism here, which basically says, I'm going to bring this up, and I could be on an iPad, I could be on a Windows Surface tablet, I could be on an iPhone. And as long as you've got a browser, you can connect in here and you can do picking, you can do transfer of inventory, you can do inventory order and create a sales order if you allow people to do that, and physical inventory. These are the scanning mechanisms that have been converted, that have been set up so far. So if I was going to transfer or pick, let's say, I would scan the work order number, and then I would scan the part number and then the location and put in the quantity, and it would issue that directly to the work order right from here.